The title arrives on a Monday, when Portland rain is doing its old soft shoe on my stoop. And for a second, I cradle the envelope like it might be warm. The paper should be uncomplicated, mechanical, a government receipt for the small revolution I've been building. I own Whitaker, owner of a let's be honest, 15-year-old Subaru Outback with a rebuilt engine, 2 new tires, and the kind of stubborn spirit a woman earns only after mastering parallel parking on a 22% grade. I peel the envelope with the patience of someone who has spent too long thinking about this car. It means an independence that doesn't leave bruises on my calendar. It means I don't have to beg for rides or wait for the late bus with the drunk boys who call me sweetheart like they're withdrawing from a savings account I never opened. It means I can leave a place I don't like as soon as I decide to leave it. The certificate slides out like a promise. I scan for my name, and there it is, bold, brisk, mine. Then a second name registers, a shadow, Dane A. Whitaker. I blink. I read it again, certain there's been a clerical hiccup, a straight datum that's fallen in from a parallel universe where my older brother still knows how to protect instead of plunder. But the more I read, the less it looks like a mistake, and the more it looks like a decision. Co-owner, the paper says, as if the car grew 2 hearts while I wasn't watching. My stomach does a slow turn. The clock over the kitchen sink taps its knuckles against my attention. I set the paper down with the carefulness you reserve for objects that could explode if you admit they already have. The part of my brain that runs spreadsheets clacks awake, paging back through forms I signed, boxes I initialed, the day at the DMV when Dane insisted on coming to make sure they don't hassle you. I can hear him even now, the friendly shrug that's made a career out of trespassing. Insurance, he'd said, half lounging against the counter where the line was longest. With me on the title, you'll get a break. And if anything goes sideways, I can talk to the adjuster. I've dealt with this. He had dealt with this. The thought squeezes my ribs. I pick up the title again, the paper suddenly heavy. There's a small, fresh dirt smell the rain has dragged into the apartment. I pull my phone from the charger and call him, because there's no version of me that can swallow this. He answers on the second ring, his voice bright, bustling. "Hey, little sis, how's the new chariot?" "Dane," I say, measuring my tone. "Why is your name on my title?" He laughs like we're sharing a private joke. "What, you didn't want to share the glamour? Relax, it's just on paper. It was the fastest way at the counter. They were giving you grief about proof of address, remember? I've got business insurance. It made it cleaner. I'll be off it in a month. Chill." My jaw tightens. "You said you were there to help, not to insert yourself. You could have told me." "I did tell you," he says, sliding easily into the part of himself that edits history in real time. "You were frazzled. You barely slept the night before. You wanted it done. I made it happen. That's what big brothers do." There was a time when that line would have worked, the mythical season when I took his confidence for competence, when my parents' half-distracted praise of their firstborn sat like a trophy in the center of our house. You'd think 32 years would sand the edges off this dynamic. You'd be wrong. "I'm going to the DMV," I say. "Today. This isn't okay." "Go," he says, easy. "They'll tell you the same thing I told you. It's a nothing burger. Don't waste the gas. Speaking of which, can I borrow the Subi tomorrow? I've got to shuttle a bumper down to Milwaukee. My lift's jammed." I hang up instead of answering, because if I don't, I'll say something that changes everything too early. I pull on my jacket, the one with the waterproof seams I restaged myself, because strength, I've learned, lives in the little fixes you do when no one's watching. Portland's sky is a sink full of dishwater. The DMV is a warehouse of sighs. Somewhere, a baby practices indignation at an opera level. I take a number and sit under a poster that says it's illegal to drive under the influence of any substance, including prescription drugs, in measured fonts. My hands won't stay still, so I open notes and title a page, car, title / next steps. I make a list of questions, I rehearse forms, and I tell myself to assume incompetence before malice, but the lettering on the paper in my bag says co-owner, and the handwriting in my head says he did this because he could. My number clicks. I approach the counter where a woman with hair like a firework reads my name from the slip and asks how she can help, like it's a real question. I see, I say, placing the paper carefully. I received my new title. It lists my brother as co-owner. I didn't authorize that. She scans it, her expression settling into the neutral mask of someone who's seen worse in the last 10 minutes. You both signed the 735226 transfer, she says, tapping the corner right here. The pen strokes I remember, certainly. His I remember too, but never on a document I believed made him an owner. The day at the counter comes back in fragments. The form slid toward me, Dane's elbow close enough to be an opinion, his voice calm as a drug. Initial here. Here, too. It just acknowledges I inspected the vehicle for you. Come on, Ione, they're closing for lunch. How do I remove a co-owner, I ask, the voice metallic in my mouth, if the co-owner doesn't agree? You can't, she says, as if reading from a catechism. Not without a release from the co-owner or a court order. She squints at the bottom of the certificate I somehow missed or maybe refused to see. And you've got a lien. She points to a block of capitals. What? Lien holder, she repeats, gently now, means there's a security interest in the vehicle. There's usually a loan attached. Until the lien holder releases, the title can't be reissued. I don't have a loan, I say, my voice going thin. The floor tilts the way bad news tilts it. I paid cash, in full. I have the cashier's check receipt. She nods, sympathetic but unmoved. Sometimes a co-owner can do it. Maybe he pledged the vehicle. You'll have to talk to them. She writes the name on a square of paper, slides it to me like a bartender sliding a glass. This is the contact they'll have on file. On the paper is a number with a 503 prefixed, and beneath it, a name, Rose City Capital. The logo is smudged, an outline of a bridge looping into itself. I thank her because manners are a thin rope and I need every rope I can grip. In the parking lot, the rain is doing the kind of theatrical patter that pretends it's not soaking you clear through. I sit in my car, the car, and I dial the number. Rose City, this is Decker. My name is Ione Whitaker. I'm calling about a lien on my vehicle. I believe there's been a mistake. The keyboard clatter sounds like he's eating peanuts. Plate? I give it. I hear the low hum of a search, then a whistle. Yeah, he says. Collateral on a small business line. Borrower, Dane Whitaker. Co-owner, Ione Whitaker. Status, delinquent, 12 days past due. He pauses, like he's waiting to see who I'll be next. You want to make a payment? My hand tightens on the phone. I didn't authorize any collateral. He never told me. I want the lien removed. That's not how that works, Decker says, not unkindly. Once a loan is originated and the security interest recorded, we need either repayment, surrender, or legal grounds. You can file a dispute, sure, but the title shows joint ownership. It won't be simple. Of course it won't, I say, and the words come out more level than I feel. How much is due? He tells me. It's not a Hollywood number, no 6 figures designed to induce fainting. It's a number I could assemble if I wanted to stretch until everything else squeaks. But it's attached to the idea that my brother used my asset to leverage his gamble, and nothing in me wants to be the trampoline beneath his jump. Can you send me the loan documents? I ask. I'd like to see what I supposedly signed. You're on the title, he says. You're not on the promissory note. A pause. But you're entitled to notice. He asks for my email, spells my last name twice, then adds, like wrapping a bag at the deli. And look, if you want to avoid the pain of repossession, tell your brother to get in touch. We're not the villains we're rumored to be. I know who the villain is, I say softly, and hang up. Would you consider selling the loan? I ask. He doesn't laugh. That's a point in his favor. To whom? To me. I let the words sit. At a discount, you get certainty, no more chasing him, I handle what comes next. A pause, long enough to be a car ride. We don't usually sell to related parties, he says, as if we are on opposite sides of a chessboard suddenly. Conflicts complicate collections. We like clean lines. Conflicts already complicate this, I say. You're 12 days past due and climbing. You can either manage a messy repo on a small dollar note, or you can assign it and put a bow on your quarter. I know how small lenders measure relief. You do, he says, and this time he does laugh, but it's more like clearing his throat. You should come in. Their office is on the second floor of a brick building, above a coffee shop that believes in pour-overs harder than it believes in gravity. The receptionist has the kind of nails that could exact a promise from anyone. Decker, it turns out, is older than his voice, with reading glasses on a chain and a tie that's been loosened since 2009. He slides a folder across the table. You're organized. I'm incentivized, I say. He shows me the ledger. Principal balance, accrued interest, late fees that accrete like barnacles. I do math silently until the number in my head is a structure that can hold my immediate future. I'll pay 60% of the principal and waive the rest. Assignment of the note, assignment of the security interest. You file the UCC3 termination when I'm done. I'll handle notice. He leans back, weighing the air. 60% is light. You're 12 days into noncompliance, and your borrower believes weather is an excuse. You'll spend the difference in staff time before cocoa season. He taps his pen, then meets my eyes. 75. 67, and I agree not to contest any imperfections in your chain of consent. His smile is thin and real. Deal. I wire the money. He prints an assignment that reads like a small empire changing hands. He hands me a packet, the promissory note, the security agreement, a list of collateral, a log of payments that looks like a heartbeat skipping beats. He adds a sheaf of template letters, notice of default, right to cure, intent to repossess. Paper that is usually ugly, but in my hands becomes a tool. Look, he says, softer now, I've got 2 brothers. I get it. This won't make Thanksgiving easier. Nothing ever has, I say, and we both almost smile. At home, I set everything on the table like a ritual. The title sits to one side, sullen, the wrong name staring up. I draft the notice of default and right to cure. 15 days under Oregon law for consumer goods. But this is a business line, so I give him 10 out of mercy or habit. I send it certified mail to the shop and to his apartment. I CC his email, knowing he reads only what flatters him. Then I wait. There is a special, awful quiet in the days after you set a thing in motion you can't call back. The kettle is too loud. The cat stares like you've learned a language overnight she doesn't speak. At work, the inbox hammers like rain against a window. I answer people who believe their crises are hurricanes and remind myself I am walking into one on purpose. On day 3, Dane calls. He doesn't open with hello. What is this letter? I say, notice of default and a right to cure. You have 7 days left. You don't get to send me legal. I bought your loan. The pause is a thunderclap. I'm the lien holder now. Silence is a shape a person makes when the floor opens and they see how high they are. You what? I made a business decision, I say, using his favorite anesthetic. You involved me. I have the right to protect my interest. You went behind my back, he says, voice thick with a kind of wounded amazement that almost trips me, but I've rehearsed. You always do this. You play the good girl until you get a chance to twist the knife. You took my car and nailed it to your balance sheet. You're not the only one who gets to be strategic. He swears, then goes quiet. What do you want? I want release my car, pay down the principal, sign a new note without personal collateral, or surrender collateral that is yours. My truck? He says, horrified. You're not taking my Tacoma. I don't want your truck, I say, and it's almost true. I want you off my title. I want you to learn the difference between help and theft. He hangs up. I let my phone face down on the table and breathe like I'm in a cold lake. Then I email Decker a courtesy copy of the letter because it matters to me that the world sees I am legitimate, even if that world is a man with a tie older than my car. On the fifth day, I get a text from an unknown number at 11:52 p.m., the hour when bravado is cheapest. "You're not going to do this, Ione." I don't answer. I dream of ropes. On the seventh day, Cleo comes over with ginger cookies that burn my throat in a good way. "If you want me there, I'll wear something that men doubt themselves." "I won't make a scene," I say, and my voice is steadier than my hands allow. "I'm sending a truck. Peaceable repossession. No breach of the peace, no trespass. We hook the Tacoma on a public street. Clean." Clean is relative, she says, but she squeezes my shoulder with a grip that says she once held onto a ladder in a storm and didn't fall. I book a recovery agent named Luis, whose voice is a calm river and whose reviews are a collection of grateful astonishments. Showed up right on time, didn't escalate when the debtor escalated, knows the law and uses it like a seatbelt. He asks for the address, the VIN, the collateral schedule, a copy of the assignment, the notice of default, the recorded UCC-1, and my ID. He asks for a deposit. He asks if the debtor is violent. I say, he's persuasive. He's used to getting his way. He likes the sound of his own story. "Then write yours louder," Luis says, and we set a time, Saturday, dawn, when even noisy men sleep like they earned it. Friday night, I don't sleep much. I sit at the table with the title, the assignment, the letters, my own small stack of well-behaved paper. The rain softens into a hush like the city is tired of its own moodiness. I think of the first time Dane ever made me feel small, how he taught me that magic trick where you pretend to pull a quarter from someone's ear and then insisted I had swallowed it. I cried until I hiccuped while he laughed, and then he found it again, generous as a god. The lesson was simple, and I should have learned it sooner. Some people will only return what they took after you make them believe it will cost them more to keep it. At 5:11 a.m., the city is just a rumor. The river is a smear of pewter. I pull on boots, roll my shoulders, and drive the Outback towards Powell with the kind of attention usually reserved for defusing bombs. Luis meets me on SE 28th in a white wrecker that looks like it has never once apologized. He's shorter than I imagined, wide through the shoulders, steady-eyed. "You sure?" he says, not because he doubts, but because he respects the moment right before. "I'm sure," I say, and hand him a folder that contains the authority to bend metal. We park a block away. The air tastes like wet penny. Luis runs a plate check and confirms what we already know. The Tacoma's registered to Dane, the lien to Northline, and now, by assignment, mine. We walk the rest of the block in soft steps, like our feet might wake the street. The Tacoma is there, faithful and dumb under a streetlight. The bumper sticker says, "Support small business," and I try not to take it personally. Louise checks the VIN through the windshield, nods once, and then goes to work with a choreography that looks like respect. Dollies, chains, a slow kneel to the truck's rear axle as if he's proposing to it. He hums something that could be a lullaby or could be habit. Halfway through the hook, a light scratches on inside the shop. My heart jerks like a fish. Luis doesn't look up. He moves faster, but not frantic. A lock clicks. The bay door rattles. Dane steps out in work pants and a sweatshirt, hair feral, eyes bleary, and then, in one rising second, sharp. "What the—" Then he sees the wrecker, and a piece of his soul wakes up mean. "Hey, get off my truck!" Luis stands, palms open, voice even. "Morning. We're here for a peaceful recovery. There's a default on the loan secured by this vehicle. We're on a public street. You know the drill. You can remove personal items. No breach of the peace." He might as well be reading a grocery list, and I love him for it. Dane's gaze slides to me, takes me in, assembles new facts in a flurry. "You," he says, and the word is a blade. "You did this." "I gave you 10 days, I say, keeping my voice level. "You chose not to cure." "This is insane," he says. "You're my sister. And you're my co-owner without consent. You know what else I am? The lien holder. I hold up the assignment like a priest holds up a wafer. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to separate us. He takes a step forward, a slow incredulity blooming into theatrical outrage. You don't get to take my livelihood. You put my livelihood in jeopardy, I say. This is math. The woman from the front desk appears behind him in an oversized hoodie, hair in a sleep musk knot, eyes taking in the scene with the speed of someone who has had her share of 4 a.m. crises. Dane, she says very quietly, like she's speaking to a dog you're not sure won't bite. Don't. He ignores her. He's talking to the audience he thinks is always watching. You could have come to me, he says to me. You could have asked me for a plan. I did, I say, and lift my chin toward the Tacoma. This is it. He lunges, not at me, at the chain, hands reaching like he can reverse the physics of steel. Luis moves without drama, a half step between Dane and the hardware. Sir, he says, and there's enough iron in it to build a bridge. No breach of the peace. He throws up his hands, left, right, left, the speech gathering in his throat like a riot. Then he does something that tells me how certain he is he can still story his way out. He reaches into his hoodie pocket and pulls out a folded piece of paper, grease-stained and creased like prayer. He slaps it against his palm. You signed this, he says, eyes bright with triumph. Co-owner consent. This gives me the right. I don't answer. I let the snow globe of the moment settle. The dark is thinning and the streetlights look embarrassed. In the distance, a siren lifts its head, curious. Go ahead, I say finally. Show it to the officer when he gets here. And I'll show him this. I lift the assignment of note and security interest. The letters, the ledger, the small architecture of a line I drew and then crossed with purpose. We'll let the law decide which story is still allowed to drive. Something old and sour passes over his face then, a recognition that the crowd he imagines is not guaranteed to applaud. He flings his hands in the air, a man performing a robbery of his own dignity, and backs toward the shop door like he's realized the cold is real. The woman squeezes his arm once, then lets go. Luis clicks the hook home. The Tacoma tilts, a tender, awful angle. My heart is beating in my left palm. I think of ropes and I think of scissors, and I think very clearly that mercy without boundaries is just surrender with lipstick. A squad car turns the corner slowly. The street holds its breath, and the story I thought I knew about big brothers and little sisters, and a size of the permission you owe blood, prepares to be repossessed right there in the middle of SE 28th, under a sky that has never cared who learned their lessons late. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow I have a special story for you. The cruiser rolls to the curb like a punctuation mark the street has been waiting for. The light bar stays quiet, no blues, no reds, just the slow exhale of an engine that didn't hurry. The officer steps out, the kind who looks like he played basketball once and never forgot how to box out. His jacket glistens with the last of the night's mist. Mornin', he says, not to anyone in particular, which is a kind of kindness. Everything peaceful? Luis answers first because he's built for this. Yes, sir. Lawful recovery of collateral. Public street. No breach of the peace. He gestures with 2 careful fingers to the hardware already set. We're nearly hooked. Dane points at me with a hand that wants to be a fist, but hasn't committed. She's stealing my truck. The officer's eyes move to me and don't move away until I give him the thing he actually needs. I pass him the folder. Assignment of note and security interest, notice of default, right to cure with USPS tracking, the UCC1 printout, and a slim log of calls and emails. Paper is a language, and I am fluent today. He flips, reads, checks dates, scans the barcodes like he reads for his church. You're the secured party. I am, I say. Assignment executed 2 days ago, 10 days cure period elapsed at midnight. He nods without changing expression and turns to Dane. Sir, she's that paperwork. You're welcome to remove personal items from the vehicle. We'll keep this civil.
Dane lets out a laugh that sounds like it could be mistaken for a cough if you wanted to forgive him. Civil? She's my sister. Family law isn't a patrol issue, the officer says. Breach of the peace is. He glances at Luis. Finish your hook. Sir, he says to Dane, do you have items to remove? Dane stares at the truck like it might speak up for him. The woman at his shoulder squeezes his arm. He yanks open the passenger door and starts scooping. A hoodie bunched into a knot, a pair of safety glasses with dust ground into their hinges, a box of business cards that advertise a promise he's not keeping. He slams a hand flat on the dash like he wants to leave a print. I stand 3 steps back, hands visible, voice inside my chest lined up like soldiers, repeating, no threats, no trespass, no touching. The sky is paling to a color only Portland loves. A jogger goes by, clocking the scene with a quick, sharp curiosity, and then filing it under other people's lives. Luis cranks, the Tacoma rises with the resigned forward fold of a bow. Dane flinches. The officer is a steady planet the scene orbits around. Where are you taking it? Dane asks, not looking at me. Secured yard on 102nd. You'll get a notice of disposition. You know how it goes. Dane swings his gaze at me like he can change physics with fury. You don't have to do this. I offered options. You didn't take them. I didn't believe you. He spits, the honesty surprising us both. Luis finishes his checks, signals the all clear, and the truck starts its slow, ungainly glide toward the wrecker's shoulder. The officer hands me back my folder. For what it's worth, you did this the right way. Most folks don't. Thank you, I say, and mean for not making me smaller, but I don't say that part. Dane stands in the street as the white wrecker pulls away, a man who has just watched a piece of his voice be turned down. He looks at me with the acid brightness of a fresh wound. This isn't over, he says, and there's no roar in it. That's how I know he believes it. It's barely started, I say. The words even in a way that makes me a little afraid of myself. The officer tips his head, the universal gesture for don't add gasoline, and then returns to his cruiser. The woman with Dane picks up the box of business cards he dropped and holds it out. He doesn't take it. She tucks it under her arm like a secret and follows him back to the bay door. Metal rattles shut. The street remembers how to breathe. Luis texts me the ARN address and an ETA. I drive home on roads that look like they were built to go somewhere better than here. The inside of my Outback smells like coffee I never finished. I set the folder on the passenger seat and talk to it like a person. We did that, I say. The folder says nothing, which is merciful. At my apartment, the title sits where I left it on the table, still whispering its insult. I pour water for the cat, who forgives me for existing by rubbing her head against my shin so hard that it hurts. The kettle starts its soft monologue. My phone blows up. Mom, what happened at the shop? Dad, call me. Don't make your mother worry. Unknown. You're heartless. This is his dream. Screenshot of a Facebook post from Whitaker Customs. A grainy photo of the toe, captioned, some people don't know loyalty. Comments full of flame emojis and cheap wisdom. I block. 10 minutes later, another. Hope you sleep good knowing you killed his business. Block. A third, a quiet, almost weary note from a woman with a real name and a profile photo where she looks like someone who eats breakfast and minds her own business. I'm sorry he did this to you. He's charming until he's hungry. I stare at it for a minute and like it, because sometimes witnessing is the only consolation available.
I spend the evening doing math, the kind that translates into control. Principal plus accrued interest plus recovery fee plus storage. I check the statute again. Article 9 has become my bedtime story, and I outline the phrases commercially reasonable and good faith in my notes until the ink ghost bleeds onto the next page. The night before the sale, I do a quiet sweep of my life like someone expecting company. I make sure my Outback spare key is in the lockbox. I text the landlord and ask if the lot cam is working. He sends back a thumbs up that looks like a sticker from the 1990s. I park with the driver's side against the chain link. I engage the steering wheel lock I bought during a past life when I thought theft wore ski masks instead of last names. At 6:22 a.m., my phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. Probably one of the cousins who only call when Dane is a topic. This is your brother. Answer. I let it sit in the silence of my apartment and brew coffee that tastes like courage. At 8,
I'm at Luis's yard. The weather has finally remembered how to be blue. The Tacoma sits inside the chain-link fence, looking sullen and practical. A few early birds mill around, regulars at the small auctions that happen all over the city every Saturday morning. A man in a contractor hoodie with a notebook full of tiny, perfect writing. A woman in a blazer and sneakers who buys, cleans, and flips with a ruthless efficiency you can smell like Windex. There's a guy I recognize from the shop across from my building. He nods at me, neither friendly nor unkind, just a person who knows trucks are currency. Luis posts the notice where he's supposed to, on the clipboard by the office door and inside the yard on the bulletin board with the missing cat flyers and the union potluck announcement. He gives a short speech about the rules. Payment methods, no funny business, personal items will be released after the sale. He's very clear about no breach of the peace, and his eye flicks to me, then away. Dane isn't there yet. My stomach is a small, angry fist. The woman from his front desk slides in 10 minutes before the hour with sunglasses on, although the shade hasn't lifted from the yard. She looks at me and nods once in a way that says, I am not here to fight for him. At 9:46, my phone buzzes with a motion-sick rhythm. I look down and the world tilts 1 degree. Alert. Vehicle movement detected, space 14. The push notification from the cheap camera my landlord finally installed shows a thumbnail of my Outback. Driver's side window, a hand, the door open, the steering wheel lock lying on the asphalt, a red grin. My mouth goes dry fast, like a trick. I tap, the live stream blooms. A tall figure in a black hoodie, cap pulled low. The posture is a biography. The forward lean, the hurry that still looks like swagger. My spare key was in the lockbox. He knew the code growing up because he takes codes like he takes praise. The Outback backs out with a slow authority that makes me shake. Luis, I say, and my voice is someone else's. I hold the screen up. He has my car. Luis looks like a man who has seen a lot of Saturday mornings go wrong. He's a co-owner on the title, right? I nod. I hate how high my voice is when I say, yes. He grimaces, shakes his head once the way mechanics do when you bring them a noise they can't fix. Then the police will call it a civil matter. I know, I say, because I read the part of the internet where women make maps for each other in the dark. I still have to call. I call. The dispatcher is kind in that way that is just above neutral. She asks if there was force. There wasn't. She asks if I feel unsafe. I feel like I'm being taught a lesson, I say before I can edit it, but I'm safe right now. She gives me a case number that feels like a hat too big for my head. You can petition the court, and I say, I am. Cleo appears like she has access to teleportation. I was 5 minutes away, she says, winded. She glances at my phone, then at my face. He took your car. Co-owner, I say. An equal right to wrong me. She swears softly, then squares her shoulders like a woman about to carry furniture up a narrow staircase. Then we finish this step. We sell the truck. One thing, then the next. He can't make us live sideways. I stand under the strip of shade thrown by a corrugated roof and text the landlord. Pull the footage. Send to me. He replies with a link 2 minutes later. I download it like it might catch fire if I don't. 10 o'clock arrives. Luis climbs up on the hitch of a trailer and calls the sale open. He starts with a dented Civic that goes for less than a month's rent. He sells a lawn tractor I did not know I wanted to own until I watched an old man bid on it with a pride that made my throat hurt. Then he clears his voice and says the words that make this real. Next lot, 2010 Toyota Tacoma, VIN ending in 2741. Secured party's right to credit bid in effect. Dane walks in then like he's on time for a movie about himself. He's showered now, hair wrangled, sweatshirt swapped for a button-down that has a collar a little too sharp. He scans the yard, clocks me, clocks Luis, clocks the truck. His jaw sets where the muscle is strongest. He stands just far enough away that he can pretend he is not performing, and just close enough that I can feel the heat from his certainty. Do you want to examine the vehicle? Luis asks the crowd out of duty. A couple of bidders glance inside, check the bed, make notes like they're writing down the shape of an apology. No one asks to start it because the battery's unhooked and the keys are not available until after the gavel. We all know the rules. Luis opens the floor. We'll start at $4,000. A hand goes up. The contractor hoodie. Another, blazer and sneakers. The numbers climb in the steady cadence of people who have resold enough to know what margin feels like. I stand quiet with my ledger in my head. At 7-2, Dane raises his hand and Luis nods, not because he respects the gesture, but because the number exists. The contractor counters.
Dane raises again, jaw wired. The woman in sneakers shrugs out at 8 and texts into her phone without looking up. The contractor hesitates at 9. Luis looks at me, an almost invisible tilt of the head. You're the secured party. You can credit bid now or wait. I wait one beat longer than is comfortable, a small private exertion of power. Then I say, 9-5. A murmur moves through the yard like we're all part of the same chest. Credit bidding is a magic trick that isn't magic. It's just math with a confident voice. Dane laughs, a single hard note. 10. Luis looks for other hands. The contractor shakes his head. A man who has learned both prudence and surrender. He lifts his gavel, a piece of wood that has ended more arguments than therapy. 10 going once. 10-5, I say, because whatever else this is, I want the price to reflect a cost he can feel. Heads turn now, not curious but interested. The woman in sneakers looks up from her phone and assesses me anew. Dane's eyes flint. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a folded cashier's check the size of a small lie. He waves it like a rescue flag. I've got funds. Luis nods, unimpressed and relieved. 10-5 going once. A voice at the chain link interrupts, nasal and certain. Hold up! A man in a navy windbreaker with a clipboard that could sue you steps into the yard, followed by a woman in a pencil skirt and hiking boots, because Portland can't help itself. Behind them, a process server with a messenger bag and a purpose. Are you the secured party? Navy windbreaker asks me. I am. He holds up a document the thickness of a confession. Temporary restraining order. Emergency motion to enjoin the sale. Allegations of commercially unreasonableness and bad faith. Hearing scheduled for this afternoon. He gestures to the process server, who is already fishing in his bag like a man who loves his job too much. You've been served. Before I can take the paper, my phone vibrates again, this time a live call. The caller ID is a number I recognize from the bottom of the notice that came with my title. Rose City Capital. I let it ring exactly once and then swipe, because some doors you walk through even if you're not sure where they land. Miss Whitaker, a voice says, new and smooth and full of calendar invites. The yard blurs and sharpens, and the air fills with the sound of a gavel that hasn't fallen yet, but wants to, and every story I've told myself about what I'm willing to do to be free lines up on the edge of this small, rust-smelling morning and waits to see who I will be.
We need to talk about the lien on the Subaru. The voice is smoother than Decker's, the vowels rounded like they've been to college 3 times. I step out from the small knot of bitters and noise, put a hand on the cool chain link, and make my mouth level. I'm listening. This is Marissa Cho, counsel for Rose City Capital, she says efficiently. I'm calling because we've received notice of a temporary restraining order served at a public sale where our former borrower is the debtor and where an item of cross-collateral, your Subaru, is implicated by reputation, if not by procedure. Your assignment was executed this week. I want to ensure our exit is clean and that you understand the contours of your rights and obligations. I understand them, I say, because I do, and because I need to sound like the adult in a room I didn't build. I purchased the note and the security interest. I issued proper notice. I repossessed the Tacoma without breach of the peace. A sale opened at 10. A last-minute TRO posed it. Allegations? She asks, blandly curious the way good lawyers are. Commercial unreasonableness, I say, bad faith. And the Subaru. I swallow. The co-owner moved it from my lot with a private wrecker. He has equal title. I have the lien. I have footage. The police called it civil. I've already reviewed your assignment, she says, a hint of approval shading the professionalism. Your chain is good. Whatever performance theater is happening on that yard is separate from our file. But Miss Whitaker, if his counsel argues that your sale terms chill bidding, be prepared to testify to traffic, advertising, location, time, and the availability of inspection. Judges dislike surprises. Then I'll bring my receipts, I say, and mean it, literally. One more thing, she adds, voice tightening only slightly. Our internal files show your brother flagged your Subaru as additional collateral on an amendment after your DMV visit. That amendment sat for 2 weeks unsigned by you,
but bundled with an inspection acknowledgement. It's sloppy. If you need an affidavit regarding our practices and your lack of consent, I can prepare it. The yard shimmers back into focus. Navy windbreaker is talking to Luis in a tone that suggests he invoices by the syllable. Dane stands with his weight on one leg, pretending none of this is personal. "You think a judge won't see what you're doing?" he says, loud enough for the bidders still lingering to log it for later telling. "You think this makes you righteous?" "I think a judge will read dates," I say. "I think they'll like that." He smiles with too many teeth. "Bring your receipts." "I plan to," I say, and turn away because leaving is the only way I ever got anything finished. The courthouse has the hushed weather of places where people bring their worst days to be measured against a ruler. Security is quick. A guard glances at my folder like it's an instrument. The clerk window smells faintly of toner and lemon. I file a response to the ex parte motion with the copy machine's hum, making a kind of backbeat beneath my pulse. My affidavit is clean. Notice dates, photographs of posted signage, the list of interested bidders, screenshots of the online posting I made last night on a local auction board, certified mail receipts, the cop's body-worn camera incident number this morning. I attach the email that arrives while I am number stamping pages. The affidavit from Marissa Cho confirming Rose City's assignment to me and confirming that my signature appears nowhere on their alleged amendment for the Subaru. The hearing is in a courtroom that looks like it was carved from a block of solemn. On Larkins wears readers and an expression that says he has been disappointed by both saints and scoundrels and sees little daylight between them during a calendar call. Navy windbreaker introduces himself as Hume, of course he is, and launches into a speech that is both more and less than law. "Your Honor," and the vowels make it to the ceiling and back. My client faces the taking of his primary tool of livelihood at a sale conducted by an assignee who is, conveniently, his sister. The appearance of impropriety is obvious. We ask that the court enjoin the sale until discovery can be conducted into the commercial reasonableness of this disposition and the assignee's potential bad faith. Larkins looks at him the way a math teacher looks at an answer that sings but does not add. "Dates?" Hume breathes like he swallows wind for calories. "Notice was, yesterday." I stand. "Your Honor, may I?" He nods without affect. I step to the lectern and lay out my paper, each sheet landing square. Notice of default and right to cure delivered 10 days ago by certified mail. Copies to shop and apartment. We waited the full period. Notice of public sale posted 3 days ago at the secured yard, at my apartment building, and online. The sale is held in a publicly accessible commercial yard at a customary hour for such sales. We have bidders on site. I'm prepared to credit bid up to the amount owed. Hume tries to interrupt. Larkins lifts a finger. "Mr. Hume, you'll have your turn." He looks at me. "Relationship?" "Sibling," I say, which is why I documented more than the statute requires. "The Subaru?" he asks, scanning a page he's already read. Title reflects joint ownership as of last week due to an instrument presented at the DMV by my brother without my informed consent. Lien recorded to Rose City Capital was assigned to me. This morning, while I was at the yard, a private record moved my Subaru from my lot. I have footage. Larkins exhales that teacher exhale again, the one that says people keep bringing him puzzles they manufactured themselves. "This motion is about the sale of the Tacoma." "Yes, Your Honor." He leans back, staples his fingers. "Mr. Hume, your client had notice and a right to redeem." Hume plasters concern across his face like a bandage. "He was assembling funds, Your Honor. He has a cashier's check for a good portion of the debt and could have resolved this if given a fair and reasonable timeline." "Why didn't he communicate that to the secured party within the cure period?" the judge asks, as if he's inquiring about why someone forgot to remove bread from the oven. Hume's mouth opens and closes once. He believed she would not act in good faith. Larkins looks at me. "Evidence of unreasonableness?" I shake my head.
We chose the yard because it's neutral. We set it at a standard hour. We posted notice. Multiple third-party bidders are present. He nods, glances down at the papers, then at Hume. TRO denied. The sale may proceed. If after the fact your client believes the sale violated the standard of commercial reasonableness, he can file suit. But he must show more than family drama. He taps his gavel once, soft as a heartbeat. Move along. Hume deflates by degrees. I thank the court because even when I am the grown-up, I remain a person who learned to say thank you to any hand that didn't smack. Outside the courtroom, my phone buzzes. A text from Cleo. How'd it go? Green light, I reply. On my way back, she sends a gif of an athlete jogging onto a field, and I actually laugh in a courthouse like that's a thing people can do.
Luis's yard looks different when you drive back with a court order in your pocket, even if you don't need to wave it like a flag. The bidders have more coffee and fewer illusions. The woman in sneakers gives me a small salute. The contractor guy flips to a clean page in his notebook. Dane is back, tieless now, sleeves rolled like he's going to lift something heavy with his bare hands and an idea. He watches me like I'm a coin that will land on its edge if he stares hard enough. Judge said no, I say when I'm close enough to be heard without the yard hearing me. He smirks, but it's tired around the edges. I have a right to try. You do, I say, and I have a right to proceed. Luis climbs onto his makeshift rostrum, raps the gavel once to call back the day. We're resuming the sale on the Tacoma. Last bid we had on the table was 10-5. Do I hear 10-6? Silence like a held breath. The contractor shakes his head, pins his pencil behind his ear. The woman in sneakers lifts her chin toward me. Your move. 10-6, Dane says, and for a moment I didn't know was still available to me, I feel sorry. He is still convinced he can muscle the universe into making sense. 10-8, I say, and it's not personal, it's a number. He lifts the cashier's check a little, a talisman. 11. Luis's eyebrow ticks. 11 going once. 12, I say, and I can feel Cleo behind me straighten like a sail taking wind. Dane hesitates. He looks at me as if I've reached over the board and moved not just the piece, but the rule. The yard is very quiet, the kind of quiet full of people counting other people's money. Luis raises the gavel higher. 12 going once. Twice. Sold to the secured party via credit bid. The wood kisses the back of his palm. The sound is small and absolute. A thing happens in Dane's face then that I will think about for years. His expression folds, not into shame, not into rage, but into a recognition so naked it looks like tenderness shorn of anything to clothe it. He looks, for a snap of a frame, like a boy who set down a weight he was too young to be asked to carry and finally felt his hands. He turns away before I can misread it. You win, he says, like we were playing a game, and maybe that's the truest thing anyone has said today. Luis gives me the paperwork with the practice speed of a man who knows the value of momentum. Title application for the sale, bill of sale, storage invoice, an accounting of credits against the debt, a ledger that now reads paid by transfer of collateral. He asks if I want the truck moved or left until Monday. I say, leave it through the weekend. I may have a use for it. Dane hears that and snorts. What, going to sell it twice? I say, going to barter, because if I'm repossessing his story, I might as well finish the sentence. By the time the sale is over and the paperwork is layered like a well-made bed, the sky has decided to let sunlight through its teeth. Cleo and I sit in my Outback-shaped absence on the curb outside the yard and make a list on the back of Luis's card. Subaru, DMV, police case number, affidavit, CHO, landlord footage, new insurance, spare key protocol, release form. Do you want to eat the first real meal you've had this week? I know a diner where the pancakes are anthropologically significant. Yes, I say, startled to find my mouth watering. But first, a stop. At Whitaker Customs, the bay door is down, but the side entrance is propped like the door has bad posture.
The woman from the front desk, her name is Jessa, I learn because it is printed on a mug full of pens, looks up when we step in. I'm not here to fight, I say, palms visible, the folder like a shield I'm setting down. I'm here to negotiate. Jessa studies me for a second that feels like a whole conversation. He's in the back, she says. If he starts shouting, I'm walking out. That's my line. That's a good line, I say. Dane is at the workbench pretending to focus on a heat gun like it just whispered a secret. He doesn't look up when I say his name. I have a truck. You have my car. Nothing. A long slide of seconds. Then, yours. You always say that word like you discovered it. I step closer, but not into the circle of his reach. I have the right to possession. You have a mess you made and a business you could salvage if you stopped confusing help with control. He snorts like I folded a poem into his mouth. You always did love speeches. Sign a DMV release removing yourself from the Subaru title and deliver the car to Luis's yard by 5 p.m. with both keys, free of any additional encumbrances. In exchange, I will lease you back the Tacoma for 6 months at $1 and release the remaining debt upon proof of insurance and a photo of the odometer by anyone forever. You get your tool, I get my life. We disagree permanently without owing. His head lifts at the word dollar. The muscle in his jaw ticks at the word forever. And if I don't? He asks. I perfect the sale, transfer title, and keep the truck. I file a replavant action on the Subaru and ask for damages for wrongful detention. I lodge the footage with the court and the DMV. I notify your insurer that a co-owner has initiated a civil claim. I am not bluffing because I am tired. Jessa leans around the doorway then, eyes soft and sharp at once. Take the deal, Dane. It's not a plea. It's a direction from someone who has watered plants no one else noticed dying. He looks at her like she betrayed him by knowing math. He looks at me like I murdered Santa. He looks at the bench like the heat gun will volunteer to testify. Then he scrubs both hands over his face like he wants to wipe his own features off and start again. You always make it sound like I set out to hurt you, he says, and it's the only genuine sentence he's managed all day. No, I say, and I am careful with it. I think you set out not to look at consequences, and my life happened to be in the way. Silence folds the shop into something like a listening posture. Outside, a delivery truck grinds past with a rattle that sounds like patience leaving the neighborhood. He exhales, and the air moves. Fine, draw it up. We draft the agreement at the fold-out table where yesterday a woman laughed at something he said. Today, no one laughs. Cleo pulls up a DMV release form from the state portal, and I print 2 copies in an office that still smells like a new business that hasn't learned humility yet. We handwrite our barter terms on the back of the sale receipt because sometimes the law is just 2 signatures and a date and a willingness to be seen. Dane signs the DMV release with a flourish that is muscle memory and not celebration. He initials the line that says he is removing himself voluntarily and irrevocably. He signs a statement that he will deliver the Subaru to Luis's yard by 5 p.m. with both keys, free of any additional encumbrances, and that he will instruct any third parties to stand down. I sign the lease back of the Tacoma for 6 months at $1, payable in a single coin I dig out of the bottom of my bag and set on the table like a talisman. I add a clause that says upon proof of insurance and a photo of the odometer because I was not born yesterday. Cleo signs as a witness because women learned to be each other's notaries when the world pretended it didn't see us. Jessa takes a photo of the DMV release and emails it to me from the shop account with a subject line that says, "For your file." Her hand doesn't shake. At 3:15 p.m., Dane texts a photo of the Subaru on a flatbed with Luis's yard gate in the background. Delivered. There is no period. Even his punctuation refuses to end the sentence. At 3:43 p.m., Luis texts, "Received. Keys in envelope." Then, because he is a person who understands the morale value of small kindnesses, he adds, "Runs fine." At 4:10 p.m., I meet him at the yard and we do the dance. Lien satisfied as to the Subaru. Release prepared for the DMV. UCC 3 termination drafted for the part of the collateral description that should never have included my car. I sign as secured party. He stamps as witness. The sound of the stamp is the best sound I have heard this year. It's what closure sounds like when translated into percussion. I slide into the driver's seat of my Outback. The familiar weight of the key in my hand feels like a small future given back. I rest my forehead on the cool ring of the wheel and do not cry. I am not a person who always needs to be brave about the right things in the right order, but today I am trying. Cleo bangs on the passenger window with a grin fat as summer. Pancakes?
Pancakes, I say, and we go. Saturday evening flattens into the kind of gold that makes even warehouses look affectionate. We sit in a booth that has seen the aftermaths of 100 courtroom mornings and toast with coffee because the diner doesn't serve anything harder than syrup. To receipts, Cleo says. To boundaries, I say, clinking my mug. We eat until the knife of hunger stops scraping the inside of me. We make the kind of plans women make when the day has reminded them of what they can do. Locksmith on Monday, new insurance policy, appointment with the DMV for the title correction, a small celebration that involves nothing except my cat, my couch, and a show where nobody steals anyone's car. I draft an email to my parents in my head and then delete it before I ever type it because sometimes the most radical act is deciding where not to spend your explanations. My phone vibrates once, then again, like a heartbeat finding itself. The first is from Marissa Cho. Affidavit attached. Let me know if you need testimony. The second is from an unknown number that resolves, a second later, into Jessa's, because she has decided to trust me with her name. He's quiet, it reads. He signed. He's back to work. I'm on my way out. I wanted you to know you weren't the only one holding your breath. I type, thank you, and mean, for being here, and for leaving when you said you would, and for not pretending this was tidy. I watch the dots appear and disappear, then a single heart reacts to my message, the kind that could be pity or solidarity or both. When I get home, I set the paper stack on the kitchen table like a small altar. Assignment, sale, leaseback, release, termination. I sit and stare at my own name on the Subaru title where lien holder, Rose City Capital LLC, will soon become lien released. I wonder how many women teach themselves contract law because a man in their family taught them lessons he learned from power. I wonder how many of us make maps layered over mistakes like tracing paper. I open a new note and title it Aftercare. I list therapy appointment, call with a consumer rights clinic, not because I need to, but because the part of me that is still 32 and newly sure likes backstops. A gentle text to mom that says, I'm fine, you can stop sending links. I schedule the DMV visit for Tuesday at 10:20 and feel a fussy joy at the specificity. Then I do something I did not plan, but that unfurled from somewhere between my spine and my mouth. I open the voice recorder on my phone and I start talking. My name is Ione Whitaker, and I'm not telling this because I want anyone to pick a side. I'm telling it because too many of us need a script for what to do when love is a rope that pulls you and ties you at the same time. I talk about forms and notices and the way a gavel sounds when it doesn't hit wood. I talk about the smell of a yard where people come together to watch someone try to make math out of a mess. I talk about how men can learn to say sister like they mean shield, and we can learn to hear sister and reply self. I talk for the first time about the scarecrow collection of praises my parents built in our house and how Dane hung his coat on them and how I learned that no one would rehang my coat unless I bought a hook and a drill. When I'm done, my throat feels like I swallowed sand and something cleaner. I don't know if I will ever share the audio. Maybe. Maybe I'll send it to Cleo in the group chat. Maybe I'll carve it into a script and read it into a friendlier room. Maybe it will stay on my phone like a charm taped to the back of a drawer. The cat climbs onto the table in the defiant way of those who have always had title to the furniture. She steps onto the papers, and then, with the bright pragmatism of a creature that doesn't know about liens, she decides to sit.
You and me both, I tell her. We belong here. Monday is paperwork, which is a kind of prayer in this country. At the DMV, I hand over the release from Rose City and the DMV removal form. The woman behind the plexiglass has earrings like punctuation and a smile she uses on people who keep their tempers. She reads, clicks, stamps, and then looks up at me like I was a problem set that solved itself. Everything in order, she says. You know we don't see this very often. What? I ask, genuinely curious. People doing the hard part cleanly. People believing they can. I want to tell her I didn't believe I could until I already was, but I just nod because humility without apology is a skill I'm rehearsing scene by scene. When I step back into the parking lot, the sky is a rehearsal for spring. I take a picture of the corrected title, just the corner where my name is alone again. Not because I think it will move anyone online, but because I want to be able to put it on my screen like a wallpaper for my nervous system when the next thing comes. I send the picture to Cleo and add, "Lunch is on me." She replies with a party hat and, "Make it a salad. My cardiologist is a ghost inside my phone." Then, because the administrative branch of my soul has not yet unclenched, I stop by a locksmith. New keys, new protocols. The guy cutting the blank listens to my half-story with the patience of men who have built their lives on precision. He says, "Family discount," when he rings me up, then grimaces, "Bad phrase. You know what I mean." "I do," I say, and put the keys in my pocket where they clink with a happy little autonomy. That evening, my father calls. The tone is the one he uses when negotiating a hotel breakfast checkout with a clerk who owes him nothing. "Your mother is worried," he says. "I know," I say. "I can't fix that for her." "You saw the photo on Facebook," he says, daring me to ask how, daring me not to.
I can't fix other people's captions, I say. I can only fix my car. He sighs, a long groan from the part of him that wanted a son who won and a daughter who applauded. Your brother says you humiliated him. My brother has to build a business that doesn't depend on me, I say, and I have to build a life that doesn't depend on him. Silence. Then, we don't know how to be in the middle of this. You don't have to be, I say, and if there's steel in it, it's the kind that gets things built. You can be over there, loving both, managing neither. He exhales. Your grandmother would have called you stubborn. My grandmother taught me to fold clothes like they respect being worn, I say, and I think of the rope again, and I do not say it aloud because he wouldn't hear it as a metaphor, but as an accusation. After we hang up, I expect the room to feel lonelier. It doesn't. It feels wider. I light a candle that smells like cedar and rain, because I am a woman in Portland and stereotypes are sometimes earned. At 8, my phone buzzes with a transactional chime. An email from Northline Equipment Finance. Release of Leon, 2010 Toyota Tacoma, attached. The truck is officially clean as far as they are concerned. Dane must have made a payment with that cashier's check he flashed like a badge. I stare at the line that reads, "Satisfied," and feel the last piece of the barter click into place like a well-made drawer. A second email lands. This one from Jessa's personal account. "If you ever need detailing, I'll do it for free," it says. Not because of him, because you taught me something. I want to ask her what, to cross-stitch it on a pillow like a fraud. I don't. I type, "Thank you. Take care of yourself." Tuesday night, I drive up into the West Hills where the overlook makes the city look like it's trying to remember all its names. I park the Outback where other people have parked their arguments and their reconciliations. I sit with the window cracked and listen to the hum. I think about all the moves that led here and how none of them required me to become someone I wouldn't recognize if I passed her on the street. I call the group chat and put them on speaker, because I want to hear their noises more than their words. "I did it," I say, and the car fills with whoops and the sound of Cleo banging a spoon on something unbreakable. "What's next?" Tiana asks, practical, loving. "Rest," I say.
A book where no one signs anything, maybe a class. I might take a community college course on small business accounting and sit in the back and learn the difference between a ledger and a life. Of course you will, Cleo says. And you'll make charts. I'll make charts, I say. And we laugh in a way that shouldn't be holy, but feels like it. When I drive home, I take the long way. Not because I'm avoiding anything, but because there's a pleasure in being able to choose the longer road and know I can leave it whenever I like. The headlights cut neat shapes in the dark. The city exhales and inhales at exactly the pace I can stand. At a red light, a message pops up from an unknown number. "You win," is all it says. There is no punctuation, which is somehow more honest. I don't respond. I put the phone back in the holder and look at my own face in the dark glass of the window like a witness willing to sign. At home, I lock the door twice. I put the keys in a dish that used to hold nothing. I slide the folder onto a shelf labeled with a sticky note that says, "Keep." I tell the cat she is the best roommate I've ever had, and she blinks at me like she was about to draft a press release. I go to bed, and for the first time in weeks, I sleep like the rope is a ribbon tied to a present I gave myself. A week later, I drive past Whitaker Customs. The bay is open. The Tacoma is inside, a patient dog, hood up, lights bright. Dane is bent over the engine like prayer looks like when it doesn't know it's praying. He doesn't see me. I don't stop. Some stories don't require an epilogue you can point to. Some brothers learn, some don't. Some sisters stop being the stagehands for other people's triumphs and start being the authors of their own seasons. I turn the corner. The river glints. Somewhere, a train remembers its line. I reach across the passenger seat and tap the corner of the corrected title where my name lives alone, and this part is important, complete. Because this is what repossessing a story looks like. Not revenge, not a victory parade, not a Facebook caption that tells you who to cheer. It is a ledger balanced and a boundary established. It is a woman in an old Subaru that is hers, the way a name is hers, driving into a morning that for once doesn't ask for proof. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.